A report was published in the Catholic media late on Friday, and it was making some waves on social media, but I expect it's going to take off hopefully today, and not because of my report, but it just seems to be how important news that gets dropped on a Friday happens to go. And the news is this. A data set was gathered of Catholic priests, young ordained men, and their attitudes. And they are decisively more conservative than their previous generations. That's not news. We've known that for some time. But what the data really shows is fascinating. Young priests aren't really interested in women's ordination. They're not interested in getting married. They're not interested in the new synodal religion. They're Catholic priests who want to be Catholic priests. And they want to not be accused of doing evil things they didn't do, but otherwise they are identifiably Catholic. This could have important consequences for the progressive wing of the church who really want to push the new religion. The Pillar gives a masterful, stunningly good summary of this. So because I have the report, the actual PDF, this is such a great summary. We're just going to go with this. Hats off to the fine folks at the Pillar for this very professional write-up. The headline: Study sheds light on generational divide among U.S. priests. The National Study of Catholic Priests found younger clergy more likely to be theologically orthodox and politically moderate. My only disagreement with that is moderate is an interesting choice of words here. Most of these young priests aren't big fans of Trump. They're not. I'm fine with that. Honestly, I get a little worried when Catholics who have the Catholic faith get super big on any presidential candidate, really. Our relationship with the American political system should be, at best, discomfort. It really should be, because none of the political parties represent us. They don't. The Democrats are clearly controlled by the devil at this point, but that makes default the other option for us, the default for just obvious reasons. But some people cannot become Republican for good reason. They can't. And really, there are reasons for you would want your clergy to kind of keep an arm's length away from some of this stuff. But this report really should be setting hair on fire over at America Magazine, because that wing of the church aren't going to have clergy support to speak of here in the next few years. Let's go to the article. We'll go over it. Consider this a good news story to start your week. So, from the article, quote, a major new study of U.S. priests by the Catholic Project at the Catholic University of America has highlighted sharp differences in the outlook and experiences of older and younger clergy. The 2025 National Study of Catholic Priests, the results of which were released October 14th, found that younger clergy were more likely to describe themselves as theologically orthodox and politically moderate, to think access to the traditional Latin Mass should be a priority, to feel lonely, and to believe they are expected to do too many things beyond their priestly calling. Younger priests were also less likely to think that synodality should be prioritized, and less concerned about the question of women's influence in the church than their older peers, according to the study. The 2025 report follows the groundbreaking 2022 National Study of Catholic Priests, the largest study of U.S. priests for more than 50 years, which concluded that clergy were largely flourishing despite a deep mistrust of bishops and fears of being falsely accused of McCarrick deeds. Further analysis of the results in 2023 found that the share of new U.S. Catholic priests identifying as theologically progressive had declined dramatically compared with preceding generations. The 2025 report offered further evidence of a theological gulf between older and younger priests. While more than 70% of priests ordained before 1975 described themselves as theologically progressive, only 8% of those ordained after 2010 did so. More than 70% of the youngest priests said they were either conservative/orthodox or very conservative/orthodox, according to the survey conducted by Gallup in May and June 2025, completed by 1,100 priests. The report said also that priests' political outlooks, quote, showed a clear generational shift away from liberal self-identification, with moderates now making up a large share across most recent cohorts. While only 25% of clergy ordained before 1975 identified as politically moderate, 37% of those ordained after 2010 did so. More than 61% of the pre-1975 cohort described themselves as somewhat or very politically liberal, and less than 15% as conservative. In contrast, only around 10% of the post-2010 group identified as liberal, and 51% as somewhat or very conservative. Yet the study also highlighted concern across the priestly political spectrum about Trump administration politics. 2/3 of priests who identified as very conservative said they were at least somewhat concerned about the administration's policies, while 83% of conservative priests said the same. End quote. Now, you might wonder, what are some of those concerns about Trump policies that they have? It could very well be things like immigration, not necessarily the enforcement, but how it's being enforced. The optics are, in some ways, not great. They aren't. Let's be real. But it could also be on social policies. The Catholic social teaching has never said the government can't be involved in feeding the poor and things. Caesar has a very good reason for there not to be hunger in this country, right? Caesar has a very good reason for wanting there to be social programs, or at least you could make the argument that Caesar has a justifiable interest in doing those things and not opposing church efforts in that, and the church should be okay with Caesar doing those things. How you go about funding them is, of course, a very completely legitimate discussion to have. And that might be where some of these concerns are, because Doge was taking a pretty draconian approach to things, and then was stopped by Congress, if you recall that whole mess. But as a general rule, I would take what you just saw there as good news. Yeah, I threw a lot of statistics at you. The statistics say there's a generational shift going on. And if I were a betting man, you take 10 years from now, I will get on this microphone and tell you that they just released a new survey in 2035 showing you that Gen Z priests, those who were ordained in 2030, were suddenly like 80% conservative. I'm expecting this generational shift to continue. That is good news. There is no other way to put it. So you should thank God that you have priests getting ordained through the system that is designed to weed Catholic priests out who are actually too Catholic, who are conservative and open to the traditions of the faith, that they're getting through anyway, because God is providing so many vocations, and they're all going in one direction, that those bishops, that those priests in those surveys that they don't trust, can't help it. They have to ordain them, or they'll have no priests. It seems that the synodal revolution of the church is going to flounder on the rocks, at least in America. If you're watching this outside the United States, let me know if you've seen similar trends in your country. You could be watching this from South Africa or Belize. I don't care where you're seeing this. Let me know if you've seen the same kind of data or the same kind of men in the seminaries and being ordained recently. More conservative than their previous generations. Very curious what you have to say about this. So let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.